Coming up on the weekend edition of the ICT Newscast.
It was enough for the students to see that a treaty was being broken. So it was just enough to get us all ready to take Alcatraz.
ICT producer Shirley Snavy talks with a Choctaw filmmaker about her documentary that highlights a pivotal moment in Native American history. Plus, with Ron DeSantis out of the presidential running, our political correspondent Pauly Denetclaw talks with Michael Stopp about how the field is shaping up. And we visit a local coffee shop in Arizona, serving up coffee beans with a side of Diné culture. Join us for those interviews on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amirawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. I am Aaliyah Chavez. We start our weekend edition of our newscast by revisiting our political segment with Michael Stopp. Our new ICT regular contributor, Michael Stopp. Let's go now to ICT political correspondent Pauly Denetclaw.
Hello and welcome back to the ICT Newscast, Michael.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
For our regular viewers, they may remember you from election night in 2022, but for those new viewers who have just joined us, Michael, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Michael Stopp. I am a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and also of Muskogee Creek descent. I went to West Point early on, spent some time in the Army, and then got into politics. And policy. My first job in Washington, D.C. was actually working for the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. And I ultimately left Washington policy and politics as the chief of staff for now Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, the only Native in the Senate. I left there and started a company basically working on economic development in Indian country, helping companies work with tribes and navigate the challenges that tribal governments can sometimes throw up.
And can you talk to us a little bit about, when you first were coming up and why you decided to pursue a career in politics and be a part of this field?
So to be honest, it was actually my veteran status that got me more into policy making. I didn't feel with what was going on in Operation Enduring Freedom or Operation Iraqi Freedom was actually good for our veterans or good for our service members. And so I got more involved in the politics there, talking about a reduction in the war effort. And definitely those who were deployed, they needed the services when they got back. The VA, and this is a bipartisan thing, has become much better, I think, in this generation of soldiers. So I was very happy to be a part of that. But I will tell you that growing up, I never really felt Indian, because I grew up around other Indians my whole life. My dad worked in Indian country for multiple tribes and IHS. So it wasn't different to me. It wasn't until I went to West Point and started working in public policy where there weren't a lot of natives that I realized that there was a little bit different. So that also drew me into Indian law and federal Indian policy. When I was at West Point, we actually started the Native American Heritage Forum, which the whole purpose was to educate cadets about Native Americans in the military service, about our history, about our culture, and to help bring Native cadets kind of a brotherhood, a fraternity to help them inculcate to the academy. So in my class, there were only 3 Natives out of 1,200 cadets.
And thank you so much for sharing that, Michael. Now moving into the White House, can you talk to us a little bit about some of what the surprises have been this election cycle? Namely, Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the race. And can you talk a little bit about how that has impacted the election?
Well, I think it is even more clear today than it was 2 weeks ago that we have a front runner in the Republican Party, and it is Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis came out strong about 6 to 9 months ago. Everyone thought he was going to be a real competitor with Trump. I would say that when people got to know him better and in person, he just didn't have the personality, and it didn't come across well, especially someone as vibrant as Donald Trump. It's hard to compete with that. He came across as trying to be Trump light in a Republican Party that is still very pro-Trump. And quite frankly, he had some real mechanical issues in his campaign. They made a lot of mistakes. And I personally am not a big fan of Jeff Rowe. And I think a lot of strategies they took didn't help them win the trust of the voters or tell them, yes, we have another option. So I think there are a number of factors against Ron DeSantis.
And what were some of the reasons why you think DeSantis, the New Hampshire primaries were last night, and he had stated that in Iowa he was going to go into the New Hampshire primary, but then did drop out. So what do you think were some of the contributing factors of that decision?
I will guarantee you that a big part of that contributing factor is going to be donors. Donors are going to look at him and say, we don't see a path to victory. The poll numbers that we were seeing prior to New Hampshire had Ron DeSantis in a dismal third place. Nikki Haley went in with the whole point of hoping to win New Hampshire, and she had a bigger ground game in New Hampshire than Ron DeSantis did. Ron DeSantis put all the efforts into Iowa and still came 30 points shy of beating Donald Trump, even though he was in all of their counties and did the traditional politicking that's expected for the Iowa caucuses. He still did poorly. Knowing that, and knowing that he didn't put the attention into New Hampshire that he needed to, I have no doubt that his donors are telling him, we're done. We don't see a path to victory. It's time for you to step aside. And I'm sure he saw the same thing.
And we did see an increase in votes for Nikki Haley last night at the New Hampshire primary. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was closer than what people were predicting. I think that they haven't finished all the counts, but I saw she's only behind by about 11%. And I think the numbers were closer to 20 at one point. But I think that you also have to look at the total number of votes cast compared to 2016 and 2020. They had record turnout in New Hampshire. And a lot of people don't understand how the New Hampshire primary works. You don't have to be a Republican to cast a vote in the New Hampshire primary. And so it is possible for someone who's a Democrat or an independent to cast a vote and skew it. So that was the concern for the Trump campaign and others, wondering, are they going to come in and try to undercut Trump? Well, they may have, but it wasn't enough of an effort. Trump got a record number of Republican votes for himself that last night. And, the electorate, at least the people on the right and the left, not the mushy middle who really make the decisions in this country, but the people on the right and left are energized this election cycle. And I think we talked about this in another story. It's going to be interesting to see how the independents vote and how the moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans vote, because normally in primaries you see the extremes, and the extremes are coming out. You saw something else unprecedented last night, and that was a write-in campaign for President Joe Biden. It is unusual for someone to win a write-in campaign like that and get over 50% of the vote. So there are a couple of interesting things about New Hampshire. It shows that the bases are energized. But again, in November, the people who make the decision are those in the middle, the independents and the moderate conservatives and liberals.
Well, thank you so much for joining the ICT Newscast, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I wanted to check in to see how everything was going with your pregnancy too.
Your food choices affect you, it affects your baby, and it affects your family. It's important to have a balanced diet with foods from all of the different food groups. Carbohydrates, water, fats, protein, vitamins, and minerals, all great things for baby. It's going to be 17.5 teaspoons of sugar in 1 can of iced tea.
I'm gonna back off on the Arizona tea for some time.
I really love and enjoy the program. It was an easy connection for us when I first met her. It was just like I could relate. She was welcoming. It made me feel comfortable.
Everybody has different beliefs. What I like about Family Spirit is that it takes that into consideration, honoring their beliefs and their background for different cultures.
He babbles all the time, and like he'll point to banana and say, "You want banana?" So that's kind of how we communicate and know what he does want and what he doesn't.
Educators will soon have a new tool to teach a pivotal moment in Native American history. Choctaw filmmaker Colleen Thurston produced a 13-minute documentary short for Retro Report on the occupation of Alcatraz Island in California. ICT's Shirley Snavy has more for us.
I was really excited to look at the Alcatraz movie. Tell us about it.
I've been working with Retro Report, an independent news organization. They do some really cool work. What they do is they work with educators who inform them what holes are missing in school curriculum, what students are not learning about. And what teachers, K through 12 teachers, have been saying over and over again is there is a significant lack of American Indian content in K through 12 curriculum, which a lot of us already know that, right? So they contracted me to make a piece about activism. And what we were really interested in is a female perspective. How do these occupations fit into these ideas of matriarchal societies? And so that's what led us to Lenata Warjack, who was one of the original occupiers and was one of the leaders of the occupation of Alcatraz. So we started with Lenata and went from there with this story.
Was there anything that surprised you that she told you? I mean, as far as the history was concerned.
She was a student the whole time that she was, the whole however long 19 months that the occupation went on. So she was taking ferries, she was hitching rides with fishermen to go back to Berkeley to turn in papers. So she'd go to the island, and she said, we didn't use this in the final cut, but she said it was so quiet, it was so easy to write there. And so not only was she finishing her studies and continuing her time as a full-time student and a mother, but was occupying this former federal prison, and writing quite a bit of policy and proposals on the island for an American Indian Center, for a university to be implemented on the island.
On the official tour, the American Indian occupation of Alcatraz is like this big. It's just this big. And it's just like something for us as Native people that was just so game changing. It's just like a footnote in history to the people that run the Alcatraz Island. It hurt.
Yeah. I mean, you asked what was surprising, and I hadn't been to Alcatraz before, and you get off the boat and there's this huge painted sign, you are on Indian land. And so for me, I thought that the island was going to really showcase that history because it's right there, front and center. That's the first thing you see. But like you said, it's not. It really is kind of a footnote. There is an exhibit that is closed off. We were able to visit because we were with Lenata. We had a camera crew, but it's closed off to the public. It was open for the 50th anniversary of the occupation, and now it's full of bird feathers. There's a ton of birds on the island, and it was really sad. I was surprised that there wasn't more visibility throughout the island, because like you said, the occupation is a pivotal moment in history for many reasons. I mean, it wasn't just about treaty rights and land back. It's become so much more. It's become this moment of visibility when Native people were portrayed empathetically in the media, and was a game changer in terms of policy. So for that to be this incredibly impactful time and moment, that was right in the middle of all the civil rights movements as well, to not see that represented felt like a really missed opportunity.
How can people watch this documentary?
It will be online for free, to stream for anyone. And again, it is for anyone, but it can be used in the classroom. And the way that we produced it is accessible, right? Like language that younger people can understand. Maybe not children, but juveniles, people in high school can, and maybe middle school, can definitely understand and absorb it.
And it's a good length for the classroom too.
There's so many wonderful feature-length documentaries, as you well know, that deal with our history, Native culture. But sometimes that's hard to fit into an hour-long class. Whereas, something that's 10, 15 minutes, it gives you time to not only watch it, but then discuss it.
I'm glad you're able to tell this story through the documentary. Thank you for joining us, Colleen Thurston.
Thank you so much, Shirley. It's really my pleasure. Thank you.
The federal prison at Alcatraz had been abandoned since 1963. So the occupiers invoked the Treaty of Fort Laramie, signed in 1868 between the United States and the Lakota Nation, claiming that it allowed them to seize federal land that was no longer being used.
It was enough for the students to see that a treaty was being broken. So it was just enough to get us all ready to take Alcatraz.
This is our land, all of it. This is a starting place for all American Indians to rally around.
On the island, Warjack was a key strategist and one of the female voices in the leadership. Richard Oakes, a Mohawk activist and San Francisco State University student, became the face of the occupation in the media.
We wish to be fair and honorable in our dealings with the Caucasian inhabitants of this land, and hereby offer the following treaty. We will purchase said Alcatraz Island for $24 in glass beads and red cloth, a precedent set by the white man's purchase of a similar island about 300 years ago. We know that $24 in trade goods for these 16 acres is more than was paid when Manhattan Island was sold, but we know that land values have risen over the years.
We appointed our governing leadership. We actually had an election, and from there we established who was going to cook the food, who was going to bring the food over, who was going to be on security, who was going to help with the children, who was going to teach the children.
The Indians seem to be picking up a lot of support. They have received several $1,000s in cash and foodstuffs.
Television news coverage spread the story of the occupation around the world. It drew attention to the occupiers' demands to end federal policies like forced relocation and the termination of tribal rights.
We will become an international outlet worldwide for authentic Indian art. And this will establish our base income to run the island and our university.
Warjack wanted to set up a Native American Studies Center on Alcatraz to teach more accurate American history. She had successfully pressured Berkeley to establish the first Native American Studies curriculum a few months earlier.
It was all colonized studies. They don't want to be confronted with the fact that this country was based on genocide of our people. So we wanted to initiate programs to talk about our truths and our histories.
Plans for the future were being laid, but then, in January 1970,
Tragedy has come to Richard Oakes, the leader of a group of Indians now squatting on the abandoned prison grounds of Alcatraz. His 12-year-old daughter Yvonne died today of injuries suffered 5 days ago in a 3-story fall while playing among the prison buildings.
Richard didn't want to stay out there. It's really hard to lose a child. And so he went back, and then we just kept working, just move forward, keep going.
soon media coverage turned negative. Negotiations with the federal government broke down, power was cut off to Alcatraz, and living conditions deteriorated.
What is the situation now on the island?
Well, we have a considerable cache of canned sea rations, but then we don't have any fresh fruits, vegetables, or meat or milk. We don't know how long we'll be able to hold out food and water-wise, but we're going to hold out there as long as it takes to maintain our occupation.
You can view the full film, The Occupation of Alcatraz, a catalyst for Indigenous activism, at retroreport.org.
We are the breath of this land and national parks. Listen, and you will hear our ancestors at these sacred places. We are indigenous to these lands, the original caretakers. The stories that tie this nation together. We are our ancestors, the hope of the future. We will not be forgotten.
One coffee shop in Phoenix, Arizona is brewing up coffee with the side of Diné tradition and innovation. ICT's Quindrea Yazzie has more for us.
This isn't just any shop. Imagine entering and being immediately greeted by the comforting aromas of coffee beans and green thread Diné tea. Skoden Coffee is an Indigenous-led and queer coffee shop centering and celebrating Diné creatives in Phoenix, Arizona. It is tucked in the front corner of a furniture and design store named For the People and has become a space to enjoy art with your coffee.
So you see like these curtains, these small drapes here, you see like, little things like these coffee cups with the spackle on them. You always see people at Jinje drinking out of these. We have like an old Folgers can here, and all of this was all intentional.
The sights and sounds are reminiscent of Grandma's place, where coffee is always brewing and ingredients are medicine. The menu here is a part of a matriarchal lineage.
One of our team members, Isabel, she's half Diné and half Hispanic. So like she likes the horchata, and it's like very close to her culture as well. So she really pushes that and it keeps that on the menu. And then like that's really good. So it incorporates like the Hispanic communities around us too, because they relate to that. And then we also let them know, have them try like other things on the menu and kind of like keep that circle, like that openness, because all of our histories are very similar in that way. And of course, like even though we have a lot of Native people that come in that are Diné, a lot of them are still people of the land, the Pipash and the To'oda Adam. So they'll come in and they'll give us like recommendations. So I think it's mainly just like having an open ear and listening to what our customer needs and want.
From the blue corn pastries down to the washi tape notes on the cups, such as land back or Skoden, the morphology of let's go then. Aside from that, it is also where people put innovation at the forefront.
So what we like to do is we like to follow like the seasons and what is being what's in season, like the produce. And we do that by doing some research, kind of like going back about what's going on, like who's growing stuff on the Navajo Nation as well. And then we do our research around here to see like, oh, there's small companies around us. We should prioritize their business versus going to like buying bulks at like the grocery store. And of course, like customers come in and they give us recommendations as well.
The coffee shop honors the journey of reconnection, reclamation, and restoring the balance back to Mother Earth. Reporting from the Acamel O'odham and Hohokam lands in Phoenix, Arizona, Quindrea Yazzie, ICT News.
Menogijiga Nungam. Menogijiga Nungam. It is a good day today. Menogijiga Nungam. The word Minnow is talking about something that is good, nice, or well. Gijigud is a word for day, and then Nungam means today. So we put all three together, we have Menogijiga Nungam. It is a good day today.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.